our presentation for today, which is 6 marketing tips you can implement in the next 60 days. And as I mentioned, I welcome questions during the webinar as well as right after the webinar, so feel free to write in with any questions you have on the material I'm presenting, and I'll do my best to get an answer to you. So an overview of what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to be talking about the biggest challenges in marketing your firm today. We're going to discuss how to make the most of limited time and money to market your firm. Obviously, marketing is not the primary activity that any of you do, so we want to figure out, with a limited budget and a limited amount of time to dedicate to getting your firm out there in terms of marketing, what are the best steps to take. We'll talk about how to create target client profiles and the value of doing that. We'll talk about how to market locally as well as globally, meaning outside of your local area. How to use your website as well as printed materials for maximum effect, and the ways in which those two differ in terms of what you should be looking to accomplish. We'll talk about what I believe is the single best paid lead generation tool for accountants. In other words, if you're going to put some money into accounting other than your website, what's the best place to put that money? And then finally, we'll be talking about the most important social media tool for your business. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the biggest challenges in marketing today. One challenge that we hear, and I've talked to countless accountants as well as people in other professions, small businesses and other professions, about what makes marketing their business difficult right now. One factor that I hear consistently is keeping up with new technology and techniques. So whatever business magazine or newspaper you're reading, or whatever websites you go to get business information from, you're going to hear consistently about all the new social media that are out there. You're going to hear about Google and what they're doing. You're going to hear about analytics and Facebook and all of these other things. And it's difficult to, number one, keep track of all of those different things that are out there. And that's something that's even overwhelming for me, and I'm in marketing. And then the other part is you have to figure out whether or not these new tools actually offer real value. We're interested in doing marketing that drives results, not just marketing that looks cool or seems like what everyone else is doing. The sad reality is that a lot of the marketing that's being done out there, if you ask people what's the real return that you're seeing on this marketing, the answer is we don't know. We're not actually sure there is any. We want to try to eliminate that from our marketing context. We want to make sure that we're focusing on things that have real relevance and real results. Some of the other challenges that we hear often is finding time to execute marketing. With everything else that you have to do in terms of managing your practice or managing the work that you're doing within your practice, as well as client management, it's very difficult to find time to actually execute marketing. Creating a budget for it. How do we know how much social media should really be costing us? How much should somebody be charging me to do social media for me, or how much is it going to cost me and myself to do that? For different marketing tools, should I be hiring someone to do it, or should I be doing it myself? Right? Which one makes more sense from a return on investment perspective? And then finally, should I build or buy? That's a very common question with websites, because there are many tools that allow you to build your own website at this point. You can also go and simply tell someone to go ahead and build a website for you, and you'll pay them for it. So where do we fall on that spectrum? What's the right set of questions for us to be asking in order to determine the right response for that? And then another challenge is getting noticed by your audience. And your audience might be small businesses, or it might be individuals and families within your local area, or it might be much broader than that. Whatever your definition of your audience is, the people that you want to reach with your message about your firm, we need to be aware that your audience has short attention spans, they have limited time, and they have marketing fatigue, meaning that they are bombarded with marketing messages all the time. And so if you don't have a compelling message to give to them at the time when they're receptive to it, it's never going to get through their filters. And we know that short attention spans, limited time, and marketing fatigue are issues for your specific audience, because they are issues for practically everybody living in the United States right now. We all suffer from these things. We all have become more immune to marketing messages, if you will. So what we want to do is marketing that is authentic and direct and speaks to the right audience in a way that will actually get through their filters. So at this point, I want to go ahead and present the first poll question. And so Sharon, if you could go ahead and pull up that first poll question. And just a reminder, voting in the polls is required in order to receive CP for this. We have about 80% of people have voted so far. So we'll take a few more seconds here. Okay, and Sharon, if you could go ahead and close down the poll, and let's take a look at the results here. Okay, so what we see here is by a significant margin, the biggest challenge that attendees are talking about is finding the time to plan and execute marketing, and that's something that we hear a lot and that I've heard in my consulting work that I've done as well. And we'll talk about how to be as time efficient and money efficient as possible in terms of executing marketing, and we're going to focus on a small number of tactics that we think can have the largest impact rather than trying to do everything. Not knowing the tools and technology, we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that I think are most relevant. And I also want to just sort of briefly say to that point, you don't need to know every tool that's out there. The reality is many of those tools haven't yet been demonstrated to offer a significant return for small businesses, and so I actually don't recommend that people try to do everything. I think it's much better that you become really proficient at using 2 or 3 or 4 tools rather than trying to do 10 of them ineffectively. So great, we'll go ahead and hide that poll at this point and move forward. So we've talked about some of the biggest challenges. Now let's talk about the flip side of that. The good news here is, number one, it doesn't take a genius to do marketing today. And I think the clearest evidence of that is the fact that I do it. So if I can do it, clearly all of you are capable of doing it as well. Really, many of the tools that are out there at this point are tools that have been designed to be relatively simple to execute. And so we don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time figuring out how to use tools. We want to find tools that have been proven to be easy to use, that have good documentation, that have a good community of people who can help you, and make the tools as easy to learn as possible. Many of the techniques are free or inexpensive. So in terms of demonstrating a return on investment, the good news is that our upfront investment can be relatively modest. I've helped small business clients who only had $50 to $100 per month to spend on marketing, and we figured out a basic marketing plan for them as well. So whether you're at that level or whether you can spend 10 times that or 50 times that, the point is that there is a plan that's appropriate whatever your budget may be. No one's budget is too small to properly execute marketing. And then finally, you can measure results in ROI. And so with many of the techniques that we're going to talk about today, I think with 4 out of the 6 specific tips that we're going to talk about, you can start slowly. You can measure, and then you can iterate. So we're really looking at this as a series of experiments that we want to run, and trying to do the best job possible at running those experiments, and then eventually do more of what's working. Many times when I work on opening up 3 or 4 or 5 different marketing channels, I don't actually know which one is going to be most effective. And the reason that we do 3 or 4 or 5 is that we want to see. You know, we're humble enough to realize that we don't actually have all the answers, and we want to see what customers and clients appreciate the most. So the first tactic that we're going to talk about is creating a target client profile. So the way that we think about a target client profile is that we're really trying to answer two questions simultaneously. The first question that we're trying to answer is, what do I do best? And another way to ask yourself, what do I do best, is where do I add the most value to my clients? Now, one key here is don't base the answer to that on just who you have currently as clients, right? Your current clients may not be exactly representative of the things that you believe you're best at. And it's also important not to base it simply on who brings in the most revenue for you right now, right? Because again, the things that are driving the most revenue for you right now may not be the most strategically important services that you provide, and you may want to veer away from where you're providing value and delivering revenue right now, right? So what we're really trying to figure out is, where is your strategic strength? I should also mention that if you ask most accountants what do they really focus on, the question that they really ask themselves is, who do I currently have as clients, or who currently brings in the most money? So if you're focusing on that same thing rather than where am I most important, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to provide differentiation in terms of how you're different than another accountant down the street. The second question that we want to ask ourselves is, what group of people most benefits from those strengths that I've identified? Right. So the combination of both of those questions is what leads us to your target client profile. And this target profile serves as the foundation for really any marketing that you want to do in the future. You don't have the budget or the time to reach every prospective client with exactly the optimal message for them. So you have to be very selective in who you're going to go after. Once you determine who your target client profile is, and it may be an exercise that you want to revise once every year or once every 6 months to make sure that you're still on point, once you figure out who that target client profile is, then it's much easier to determine which marketing tactics are most appropriate for me, how do I want to use those, what are the words that I want to use to describe myself. Because if you decide that your ideal client, the client who can benefit the most from your greatest strengths, is a Fortune 500 company, the marketing tactics that you're going to choose to use, as well as the ways in which you're going to use those techniques, will be very, very different than if you're going after mom and pop shops in your neighborhood. So we want to make sure that we're pinpointing exactly who our client profile is, have a picture of them visually in your head whenever you're making marketing decisions down the line. So the next thing we want to talk about here is maximizing your local presence. And let's talk about what we mean by that. So if I ask you to come up with certain adjectives to describe you and your business professionally, these are some of the ones that you might come up with. We are dependable. We are high integrity. We are trustworthy. And I can tell you that zero imagination on my part went into coming up with those. Those are ones that I see consistently on the websites of CPA firms and accountants that we work with, right? So this is clearly ways that that firms want to describe themselves, and that's great. But I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that in addition to being those things, most accounting firms are also local businesses, right? That's another descriptor of who we are and what makes us valuable. And it's important that we maximize that portion of it. Now, that's not to say that all of your clients are local, but it's rather to say that geography does matter, right? Many firms have gotten out of being completely geographically based and have expanded so that they have more diversification in terms of cyclicality and in terms of the types of clients that they're bringing in, and that's fantastic. That reduces our exposure to our business overall. But we are still inherently, most of us are local firms. And so it's important that we maximize our home court advantage. So let's talk a little bit about how we actually want to do that. First of all, the importance of your local presence online, right? How much does that actually matter, how you're presenting yourself as a local business online? 97% of consumers who use the internet, 97% of consumers use the internet to research products or services in their local area. And this has been done both in terms of consumers as well as in terms of local businesses. The percentages come out pretty much the same either way. And that's not surprising. If you or I were researching a local business, a repair shop or a print shop or whatever else it might be, we would almost certainly be looking on the internet as well, right? So when we talk about what we want to try to accomplish, our online presence is one of the first places that we want that local presence to be able to really manifest itself. So how do I get noticed? Well, one factor is simply the number of people who visit your website. The more people visit your website, the higher you're going to show up in search listings, the more prominence you're going to have on other websites. Clearly, that is a pretty primary effect, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about how to get more traffic to your website. But that's not the only factor, not by a long shot. There are two other critical variables, and we can see that by looking at these listings here from Google results. So I've highlighted in orange here two specific things that we're going to talk about. One is on the left-hand side, you see for this contracting company, they've had 10 Google reviews, and their average score is a 4.4 out of 5. Now, in search results on Google and on Bing, reviews are deeply important to Google and Bing. And the reason is that those are real, generally authentic, though not 100% of the time, but almost always authentic characterizations from third parties. And that's really what Google wants. Google is not that interested in what you have to say about your business. They're much more interested in what other people have to say about your business. And that's the value of the reviews there. On the right-hand side, we see, and this would be just below a map on Google, this would be right alongside a map on Bing, you'll see listings. So this is physical addresses as well as phone numbers, right? And these are then clickable on a dynamic map. So that is really, really important as well. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to maximize the effect of both of those. So the first thing is perfect your online listings. We want to make sure that we are listed online as much as possible in all the appropriate places as accurately as possible. So the first thing I'm going to say is get on the AccountantsWorld directory listings. AccountantsWorld houses one of the largest directory listings for accountants, and it is exclusively for accountants in the country. It's usually the top local search result for find an accountant or find a CPA. So whatever your home city is, if you go to Google after this presentation and type in find an accountant in and fill in your city there, one of the first two results almost assuredly is going to be the AccountantsWorld directory listings. So why is that important? Well, that means that many, many prospective clients are going to go to there as well. And so what you see on the left-hand side here is what prospective clients see when they're searching for an accountant on the directory listings application. They can search by geography, they can search by zip code, city, or state, or any combination thereof, and then they'll see listings underneath there as well. Accountants who buy the directory listings service from AccountantsWorld not only get listed on there, but can get a gold listing as well, which assures that you're going to be listed in the top portion of that page and have a larger listing as well. So those are the sort of things that can make a dramatic difference, because many times people won't go past the first one or two listings within a geographic area. So if you have the ability to stand out, that can make an enormous difference there. The second thing you want to do is to clean up your NAP. And NAP stands for name, address, and phone. We want to make sure that your name, address, and phone is listed accurately everywhere online that it might be. So two steps that we can take and combine these two steps will take you less than an hour, and they can really improve your online listings, especially if you've moved sometime in the past few years. Many businesses that move will go ahead and change their official address, but that will not propagate to other online listings, and so other places will still be listing your old information, which can really hurt you in terms of clients finding you. So two steps we want to take. Number one, get your exact address format from USPS. One of the issues that we see often is many small businesses have a suite number or a house number or a unit number, and sometimes that will not be captured as part of your online listings in various places, and obviously that is going to impact you. Sometimes zip code gets butchered because some places it gets captured as 5 digits, some places 9 digits, and some of the listing services don't deal with that very well. So what you want to do is get your exact address format from USPS, and then provide that information to the 4 key bureaus. And these are the 4 bureaus that basically provide information for almost all of the online listings out there, with the exception of Google listings. And we'll talk about Google more in a minute. So Axiom, Localese, Factual, and Infogroup, you can find all of those online. All 4 of those sites have a place where you can go ahead and say update my business's listings or claim my business's listings. You simply go on there, you provide them with your most accurate information the way that the Postal Service has it for you. You provide them with the best phone number to contact you, etc. And they will then, within a matter of a few weeks, propagate that throughout the web. So when you go searching for your firm in the future, more accurate information is out there, which means that you're much more likely to be found and contacted. The other thing you want to do is to make sure that you're listed everywhere else. So those 4 bureaus that I talked about work with the majority of online listing services. However, they don't work with all of them. Some of them are separate from that. So 2 other places that I recommend you go to, and again, this will not take you too much time to do. One is go to getlisted.org. Getlisted.org is basically an aggregation service. They will pull down from the internet your business's information from various different sites. So they work with Yahoo, they work with Yellow Pages, Super Pages, if you're listed on Best of the Web, if you have reviews on Yelp, which I'll talk about more in a minute. All of those things are part of getlisted.org. So you can go to getlisted.org, and what it will do is tell you the locations on the web where you have missing listings, the locations where there is a listing but it hasn't yet been claimed. In other words, your business has not claimed that listing, so you can update it in the future, as well as the places where they have complete information, so you can make sure that that complete information is accurate. So this is sort of a one-stop shop to be able to see how you're listed in anywhere. You may get anywhere from 7 to 20 results back, depending on what part of the country you're on and how well you're listed online. You can just very, very quickly scan and make sure that you are accurately listed everywhere possible. So this is a great way to really save yourself time in terms of getting listed. By the way, I see the question has come in that asks, where do you get the exact address format from USPS? So I went on USPS's site probably about 6-7 months ago to research this. It may have changed. They change their website all the time. But on USPS, you can do a lookup of businesses. You can do it by geography or by business. And so go to look up your business's name, and then you should see that come in there. If you don't see that, USPS actually has a pretty good email help function as well, and they can help you to find that on there as well. So getlisted.org is a great sort of one-stop shop. Again, we're all about trying to save you time. You guys mentioned that that is your major challenge in terms of executing marketing, so we're trying to make this as efficient as possible for you. However, there's one other place that after you do getlisted.org, I would recommend you go separately, and that's Google+. Now, G+ is included in GetListed. However, they collect and list your information differently than any other directory. And Google+ is actually more important than any other directory. Reason for that is, if you're not on Google+, your search listings suffer as a result of that. So if your business is not listed on Google+, your google.com search listings will actually get impacted negatively. Now, I'm going to put aside the ethical question of whether that's fair or not. We can have a separate discussion about that, but it is the reality, and we need to deal with that. So take 10 minutes and get your business listed on Google+. All you have to do is create a basic listing, which basically includes your name, a brief description of your business, and if you already have a website, you can just pull it from that. Contact information, website, URL, phone number, your physical address, etc. And that's pretty much it. It literally takes 5 minutes to go ahead and get started. You can add a lot more information onto Google+, but my experience with small businesses has been 50% of the battle with Google+ is simply making sure that you're listed, which takes 5 minutes. All the other social elements of Google+, it's great. If you have time to do that, and if you're proficient at doing that, fantastic. But a significant portion of the value of Google+ is simply making sure that you have a listing on there, you claim that listing, and you keep the information accurate on there. Somebody else asked a question, is Google+ relevant? I understand that it has lost momentum. That's a great question. So as a social network, Google+ has, I'll be charitable and say, debatable relevance. It's clearly far, far behind Facebook, and it hasn't really caught on as a consumer social network. However, its main impact is in the way that its information propagates throughout the rest of the web via Google. It's also becoming increasingly important because it's the channel for Android devices, and considering that Android has, depending on what part of the country you're in, anywhere between 45 and 65% of the market share of mobile devices, that's actually really important as well. So Google's alliance with Android and the way that they're manifesting that with Google+ means that you really want to make sure your small business is listed on there. One other question I'll tackle at this point is, how about delisting from some of these for better management or having to move to a new location? Yeah, so when you go on getlisted.org, you can choose to, if you see some listings that are missing or even some that exist for you that you say, I'm just not interested in being a part of that directory, perfectly fine to go ahead and remove your listing, and getlisted.org can do that very efficiently as well. Generally, the only reason I would suggest getting delisted is if you're on a website that you believe does damage to your reputation. So if there's a website that is not related to accounting services or small business services and is far too casual for presenting your business or has advertising that you think diminishes your business, things of that nature, you might want to go ahead and get delisted. But you know, generally I say the more listings the better, because you don't know where your customers are going to find you, and because of applications like Get Listed, you can still manage all of them fairly quickly without having to go to each site separately. So I think there's not too much downside to keeping them up, generally speaking. Next, let's talk about client reviews. It is not only appropriate, but really advisable to ask your most satisfied clients to post reviews online. It's great that your clients are satisfied. It's great that you have 85 or 90 or 95% client retention. It's also really important that you're getting something out of that in addition to the recurring business. Now, the key here for online reviews is you want to request that people provide you a review. You do not in any way want to guide them on what to say. And the reason is that every major review service online, whether we're talking about Yelp or Angie's List or Bing reviews or Google reviews or Facebook reviews, all of them have incredibly sophisticated algorithms to determine if the same type of review is being written repeatedly. And if somebody writes the same type of review over and over, their assumption is that they've been coached to do that by the small business, and they will immediately take your listings down, and you will then have to prove to them that you are not coaching people on what to say. So I've seen small businesses get caught up in this, and it is a major nightmare to get reviews reposted at that point. So simple solution here, request the people write reviews for you. Do not in any way tell them what to say. Just tell them to be honest and say whatever they would like to say about you. So where should we be getting reviews posted? Many different places, and obviously having a listing on Google, and we'll talk about Facebook and LinkedIn later on as well, and how having followers there is important. But in terms of specific client reviews, I think the two most important sites are Yelp and Angie's List. Yelp much more so than Angie's List. First of all, because Yelp is free. Angie's List is, for most businesses, not free to be listed, and obviously customers have to pay as well, so there are a lot fewer people searching for businesses on Angie's List. So Yelp is sort of priority number one for us. Um, and that's true for two reasons. Number one, it's the biggest review site out there, and it is growing faster than anybody else out there. Number two, Yelp also provides the local results for Bing. So you get sort of twice the exposure if you're listed on Yelp and are getting positive reviews. You're getting it both on Yelp site and on Bing, and that's 2 of the 15 most visited sites on the web. So that's really, really helpful. Um, so um, So Yelp is the first place that I recommend, and it's very easy to see reviews that are coming in there. If a negative review gets posted on Yelp, you also have the ability as a small business to respond to that. And sometimes people will just have comments that there's really not much response to. If you can provide a calm, rational, fair response to it that will be informative to other clients, I encourage you to go ahead and do that as well. I actually had I see a couple questions that have come in that said getlisted.com now goes to a site called moz.com. Is that the same entity? Yes, it is the same entity. GetListed was actually larger in this space than moz.com was. Moz.com actually bought them out fairly recently, which I forgot to mention before. But yes, you can still achieve the same service through moz.com there. In terms of getting listed with Yelp, a couple of questions have come in. How do you get listed with Yelp? So you can go ahead and create a listing. There's an area there for local businesses. You create your listing. It will then get posted shortly thereafter. They'll do some validation, like calling your phone number or checking your address on other listings. Once you're posted, then anybody can go ahead, who's a member of Yelp, can go ahead and start to post reviews. So make sure once you have your Yelp listing up, you start to ask a few people each week, could you please go ahead and provide me with a review. One other question that was listed is, what if there's a fraudulent review, which is untrue? How do you delete it? Yelp is very good about that, actually. In addition to having strong algorithms to make sure that the reviews are legitimate, they also have algorithms to make sure reviewers are legitimate. So, for example, if an accountant down the street from you posted a negative review about you, they have good ways through IP filtering and other mechanisms to try to find that out. And if they find that that review is completely inconsistent with other reviews or has been posted by an IP address that they can identify, they will take that down for you. So they can take a little bit of time to do that. I will warn you that it can take a little bit of time for that, but they do tend to be pretty good about actually doing that. Okay, so we're going to talk about websites at this point. Before we talk about websites, I want to go ahead and open up the second poll question. So Sharon, if you could please open up the second poll, which has to do with websites. Okay, the poll is now open. And the question is, how satisfied are you with your firm's current website? And the choices are very satisfied, our site is consistent with our firm's goals, somewhat satisfied, somewhat unsatisfied, very dissatisfied, it does not reflect our firm's abilities, or we do not currently have a website. And so we'll give 10 or 15 more seconds here for people to submit their response here. And just a reminder, you are required to respond to all 3 poll questions if you're interested in receiving CP for this, so please go ahead and get your votes in here at this point. We'll take just a few more seconds here. Okay, Sharon, let's go ahead and close that poll out. We're over 90% voted. And so we can see the results here. So 37% are somewhat satisfied, 16% very satisfied, which is fantastic. That's great. 25% are either somewhat unsatisfied or very dissatisfied. And so we're going to talk about websites specifically, but I would say that if you're in either of those 2 camps, somewhat or very dissatisfied, this is something that can be addressed. And it does not take a tremendous amount of time. It doesn't take expertise. This is something that can be figured out, and you can be doing better within the next 60 to 90 days. 22% said we do not currently have a website, and I'm sure some of the folks who are in that camp are considering having a website. Some may feel that they're too small to have it or don't know where to get started, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I'd be happy to also answer those questions after the webinar as well if you have specific questions for me about that. So let's talk about 5 things that we believe are important to get right on your website. Okay, we're going to talk about these 5 together as sort of one combined tip related to websites. So the first one we're going to talk about is you have to have clear differentiation on your site. We're trying to answer the question, why should I pick your firm instead of your competitors? Right? That's ultimately the question that anybody who comes to your site is trying to get answered. If your site doesn't answer that question within 30 seconds, it's failed. It's really that simple. And that may sound overly harsh, like, wow, in 30 seconds I have to explain why I'm different, but that is the reality, and this chart here helps to explain why that's the case. So this was research done by Forrester, and they looked at how long people were staying on a site as measured by their probability of leaving a page at any given point. And so what you see is that the probability is significantly higher within the first 20 seconds and then sort of smooths out after that. In other words, there are a group of people who are coming to your site and are interested in getting deep information. They may be return visitors, or they may know exactly what they're looking for, and they're going to go through and deeply investigate. Unfortunately, that's not the majority of website visitors. The majority of people who are coming to your site are looking for a reason to either stay and commit to reading more or to leave within the first 20, 30 seconds tops. So we want to make sure that we're providing early on our homepage a clear explanation of what it is that we focus on and what makes us different. Second point on here is we want to make sure that our website is mobile ready. Mobile ready means that you want to have a site that is just as user-friendly on Apple or Android devices as it is on a laptop. So why is this important? Well, recent research from Marketing Sherpa showed that over 55% of B2B customers are using smartphones to research products and services. Not surprising. I think many of us, if not the majority of us, use our tablets and our phones to research products and services that we're considering using, right? And that number is growing rapidly. That 55% number for B2B customers using mobile devices to research, that number was under 40% last year, or the previous year when they did the survey. So we're seeing very, very significant, fast growth in that. So we want to make sure that our website looks and works just as well on mobile devices, especially on tablets, as it does on laptops. A question just came in, is mobile ready the same as mobile optimized? Generally speaking, for our purposes, I'd say that they're pretty similar. Mobile optimized means that you may actually be making changes to the structure of your site, or whatever website application you're using makes changes when it detects that it's a mobile service or it's a mobile device that's accessing it. You can go with a mobile optimized website. Or you can go with a website that simply looks good on either one. I don't really have a preference on that. I would say that you want to pick the best website provider that you possibly can for the other reasons, and also make sure that that it looks good from mobile perspective. So those two are not exactly alike, but I would say the mobile ready is good enough. Next thing I want to mention is file sharing. We want to make sure that we're offering that on our website. So clients, actual clients of yours, rather than prospective customers, clients expect your site to not only provide them with information before they became a client, but also to provide ongoing value after they partner with you. One effective way to do this is to save them and your staff time by securely sharing files online. So AccountantsWorld has a website application called Website Relief. It's an award-winning website builder tool. You can build your own website and include whatever sections you'd like to on there. And in addition, Website Relief also integrates with a client portal application that we provide. So your clients can actually use their website, can use your website as a gateway to access their files, to access their financial statements, their tax returns, etc. So that's obviously going to save your staff time. And it's great for your clients as well. They know that they have that information there. The other really important thing about file sharing is it dramatically helps with client retention. once they have that convenience available to them, people don't want to have to switch to somebody else and have to have a new application and so on. And so it actually gives a much higher level of perceived value that you're providing to your clients. We want to make sure that that's tightly integrated with our website. The final two things I'm going to talk about on the website, contact information and bios. Sounds obvious, right? You want to make sure you've got your contact information. So many sites tuck this information away in hard-to-find places or on their 15th page. This should be immediately apparent to visitors as soon as they come to the site. Within that first 20 to 30-second window, you want to make sure you're telling them how to go ahead and contact you. Biographies, you want to do this for all of your staff, not just for your partners, and preferably with photos. Photos help to humanize your firm and your staff, and it can also really create a sense of pride among your staff as well. A lot of people take a lot of pride in the fact that their professional information is up there on their company's website. And then the final point I'll talk about on the website is non-selling content. So what do we mean by non-selling content? Well, that can be, like on this website, a blog. Right, you can post content related to a blog, or it can be other things as well. So I'm going to talk just very, very briefly about content. In case you are not aware of what we mean by content and why it matters, content can be blog posts, it can be white papers that you write, frequently answered questions or frequently asked questions, webinars like this one, presentations, PowerPoints, videos, podcasts, all of that is content, and all of it is extremely valuable. Content gives you the ability to, number one, grow your list of truly interested prospective clients, helps you maintain visibility with your existing clients and loyalty from them, and it helps you show up much higher on search engine results. So Google cares a lot more about content that you write, white papers, webinars, PowerPoint presentations that you publish online, etc. It cares much more about that than it does about the marketing copy on your website, because it knows the copy on your website is marketing, right? So things that are actually informative are much more relevant to search users than things that are marketing copy. So that's one of the really, really big benefits that you have there. The goal with content is to educate and build trust. And a question came in, what about using a blog instead of a newsletter? Perfectly fine. I'm actually completely neutral on what type of tool you should use to publish your content. Any of those up there, whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever you're already using, whatever you can get most cheaply, any of those are fine. Your customers and prospective customers will appreciate any of them, and just as importantly, your search engines will appreciate all of them as well. So what should you write about? You want things that are at the intersection of what do my most important clients care about and what am I extremely knowledgeable about. So what are things that are interesting to my audience and things that I'm extremely knowledgeable about as well. Keep it authentic. Speak in your own voice. Don't be overly formal. Use the voice that you would use that sounds like you to people who know you well. Keep it simple and intuitive. Remember that your audience knows way less about this topic than you do. So try to keep it as simple and intuitive as possible. Readers love lists, and I'll give examples of a couple of that. And collaborate with others. There's nothing wrong with collaborating with other colleagues or people in your network or in your Rolodex, so that way you both have content that you can share with your audiences. And here I've just briefly given examples of some content. 5 tax issues to consider before you invest. By the way, 5 there is sort of critical. 5 tax issues to consider before you invest will get a lot more readers and a lot more clicks than tax issues to consider before you invest. This is just sort of reader psychology. You see some other examples there as well. I won't run through all those in the interest of time, but you can take a look at those yourself. Next tip I want to talk about, last thing I'll mention on websites, somebody asked, how do you determine the effectiveness of your website and how much people are using it? So you can add on tools like Google Analytics, which is a free tool that you can put onto your website. It's just a little snippet of website code. You put it onto all the pages of your website, and then you can go to analytics.google.com and see data on how many people are visiting it and how often and what pages they're going to. There are plenty of other services out there that offer a lot of information as well. I mentioned Google Analytics just because it is by far the #1 free service that's used for website analytics. There are a lot of really, really great ones out there, and if you have any questions on that, you can certainly contact me, and I'll be happy to provide information offline about that. Next tip I want to talk about is revamping your printed materials. I want you to think differently about your brochures and your business cards. A really key point here is that your business cards and your brochures are meant to serve a very different function than your website. We saw that chart before for websites where such a significant percentage of viewers to your website are going to leave within 20 or 30 seconds, or at least make a decision within 20 or 30 seconds whether to leave or not. That's not generally true with business cards and brochures. Business cards serve the specific purpose of providing contact information as well as reminding people about you, providing branding. Brochures provide branding, but they also provide deeper information. So we want our printed materials to provide more of a comfortable, more involved level of interaction than our website does. Our website is built with the knowledge that many people are looking for a reason to leave quickly. Our printed materials should be built for people to lean back, take the brochure, and work their way through it, and come up with questions that they want to ask you afterwards. Cards should also include a referral request. So if you love our service, please tell your network, then tell us. Right? If you offer people referral discounts, you want to encourage them to do that, or simply just say referral is appreciated. And all of your social media accounts. So if you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, you want to include that information on your business cards as well. Your brochures should include your benefits first, your features second. What I mean by that is if you have a 3-fold brochure or a 2-fold brochure or even just a 1-sided brochure, the first thing that people should see after your name is what are the key benefits that I can expect from you. Because brochures are often passed from one person to another. So the person who you have a conversation with may not be the person who eventually ends up reading the brochure. So you need to re-explain in calm, rational language what are the specific benefits that you're best at providing. Then talk about features later. Never talk about pricing early on. Never talk about other things that are the answer to how I do it. First answer, what is it that I do exceptionally well? We want to make sure that we're talking about benefits first. Also, you want to have a very clear call to action. A brochure at the end of it should say, ready to learn more or ready for a free consultation, please call this number. Or to sign up for a 30-minute review of your accounting work, please email me at this address. It sounds like such a simple thing, but so many brochures either don't have that information at all, don't have a clear request of what I would like you, the prospective client, to do, or they don't make it clear how to contact me. I want to make sure that we address both of those things very, very early. A question came in saying, can brochures just be electronic, not printed? That's really up to you and what you know of your clients. What I generally tell people is if you have printed materials in your office in a prominent location and no one is ever picking them up, that probably means that your clientele and your prospective clientele doesn't really value printed materials that much. But I would let your clients drive that decision rather than you making that decision. I always encourage small businesses to at least try printed brochures one time and see what sort of response you get to that, how many people are picking it up, how many people mention that they saw your brochure, etc., before you make the decision to pull the plug on that. Tip number 5, invest in paid search. So many of the things we've talked about so far are either free or, like your website, they're an investment, but we know that it's something that's going to be used often, so people can justify that cost. And our website relief application is under $600, so we're not talking a significant cost per year there. Paid search falls into a different category. First of all, I want to explain what paid search is. If you go and search for computer repair in Seattle, you're going to see these listings, and the listings in the bottom left here, which I've now colored in green, that is what's called natural search. That's free. There's nothing you can do to pay your way into those search listings. Google determines who should show up there simply based on their very, very complicated algorithm, which includes how many people visit your site, how many other sites link to your site, all sorts of other information that's out there. Are you listed on Google+, etc. The rest of the information you see here is coming in via sponsored listings. In other words, people paid for that information. And the way that you know that is if you look just below the map here, you see in very, very small font it says ads, right? And Google intentionally puts that in small font because they love it when people click on their ads. That's how they make money. Google is a $60 billion plus company. Over 35 billion of that comes directly from people clicking on those ads that are in that pink space there. So we want to make sure that we're not removing ourselves from that large swath of territory where people might notice us. Another illustration of that is total Google search clicks. 35%, just over a third of them, come from natural search, the things that you don't have to pay for. 2/3 of them come from the sponsored listings, i.e. paid search, right? So paying does make a difference here. The main thing I'll tell you in terms of Google search, and you can learn more about this by going to Google AdWords, adwords.google.com. Go for quality rather than quantity. You want to have a small number of keywords and you want to bid aggressively on that. What I mean by that is if you feel that the number one service that you provide is that you are the best estate accountant in your area, right, then the term estate accountant in Seattle or in New York or in White Plains or in Johnstown, Ohio, you want to make sure that that search term is one that you absolutely own and bid very, very aggressively on. The more aggressively you bid, the higher you're going to show up on search results for that. So you don't need to be bidding on hundreds and hundreds of words. I'm a fan of bidding on very, very few terms that you believe describe exactly what somebody would be looking for if they're looking for you, and bid very, very aggressively. A question I get all the time is how much do I need to spend on Google AdWords? You can start with whatever budget you want to. There are people who choose to spend $4 a day or even less than that. I think $100 a month is perfectly reasonable to start with if you have a small number of keywords, and then you can adjust afterwards. And the key thing with AdWords is iterate, iterate, iterate. You're going to put out some keywords out there, some descriptions of your firm. You're going to see some of those people click on a lot, some of them people don't. The ones that people are not clicking on, get rid of them. Try to talk about your company in a different way. I've worked in situations where I'll change my my company's paid search listings every 60 days or so. I'll really dramatically change them because I'll see that some things are working and some things aren't. So it's relatively inexpensive. Even though paid search has become more expensive over time, it's still, for most businesses, very good bang for the buck. And it's very trackable. You can see exactly how many people came to your website as a result of those ads that you've been showing. Next thing I'll talk about is social media. This will be my last point here. Use social media strategically. So for most professional accounting firms, the most important social media sites are LinkedIn and everything else. LinkedIn, for almost every professional accounting firm, is the first social network that you should be paying attention to and creating a presence on. So if you're not on LinkedIn yet, you probably should be. I would strongly encourage that. And this is probably a good place at this point to go ahead and open up the third poll question. So Sharon, if you can launch the third poll. Okay, the poll is now open, and the question is, how would you describe your firm's presence on social media right now? We don't have a social media presence and don't plan to. We don't have a social media presence but plan to start soon. We use social media but are figuring out how best to use it, or we are active on a daily or weekly schedule on social media. And when I talk about social media here, I'm talking about any combination of LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, potentially other sites as well, Google+, etc. So we'll give a few more seconds here for people to fill in. Okay, and we're going to close the poll here in 5 more seconds. So please click submit now. Okay, let's go ahead and close that poll. Okay, and thank you, Sharon. So the results we see here, 41%, pretty good diversity of responses here. 41% are using social media but are figuring out how to best use it. I think that's true of the majority of small businesses around the country at this point. So we're seeing validation there. 31% do not have a social media presence but plan to start soon. That's great. 15% don't have and don't plan to. 12% are already active, which is fantastic. That's great to see. So let's go ahead and close out of that, and we'll talk a little bit more here about LinkedIn. So why do I consider LinkedIn so important? The key here is LinkedIn is built to support businesses and business people. 77% of members use LinkedIn to keep up on business news and to research companies. That's higher than the percentage of it on Facebook. So even though there are many, many more prospective clients who have a presence on Facebook than on LinkedIn, their intent matches with what you do much more closely on LinkedIn than it does on Facebook. We're catching people at the right time there. And what LinkedIn allows you to do, 3 easy steps here. Number 1, create a company profile. Totally free to create a company profile. You can just do a search on company profiles in Google and you'll see how to create that on LinkedIn. Number 2, you can add a list of your services. So you can create a tab there that talks about what services you offer, and LinkedIn does a great job of making sure that those services then index very well in search engines. So if somebody's searching for that specific service in your area, your LinkedIn profile might be one of the first things that comes up. And finally, you can then start posting updates of key news or content. So that content that we talked about before, right? Now we're talking about how can we reuse that content within LinkedIn as well. Question came in, is it advisable for a CPA to agree to connect with another CPA who wants to connect? You know, that's a good question, and I think it really comes down to, is this someone that you're comfortable having your business contacts? Because once you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, when you connect personally with somebody on LinkedIn, they're not just a follower of you, they can see all of your other followers as well, which might mean that they can see some of your clients. So you might want to think twice about that. Company pages, which I'm showing here, work differently than personal pages, and I strongly encourage you to get company pages. Even if you are a sole proprietor of your accounting firm, a company page is really valuable because it lets you do things like add your list of services and post content that is much more difficult to do and less optimized on personal pages. So we talked about LinkedIn, very important. I encourage all of you to be on LinkedIn. You're going to find the audience that most wants to talk to you at the right time there. The others, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, my feeling on these is use them if you have the time and capacity to go ahead and try them. Twitter, what I generally recommend for people is start by simply following people who are interesting to you and retweeting interesting tweets that you see. So if you're not familiar with Twitter or not on Twitter yet, you can simply choose to be silent and just follow other people that you find interesting or other organizations that you find interesting. And when they tweet something that's interesting, with one click you can then retweet that to your followers as well. And there are many people who are simply content curators. What they do is simply send out to their audience, here's things that I found that I think are interesting and I'm retweeting to you. And that's a perfectly valid way to use Twitter. If you want to go beyond that, you can post links to any original content you produce, blog posts, etc. And you can also use hashtags. So you can post something and then at the end put the hashtag accountant or hashtag Maryland CPA or whatever else is appropriate for you. And that can help if somebody is searching for CPAs on Twitter or searching for accounting news, that your information comes up there. Facebook and Google+, what I generally recommend here is just post the same content updates that you post other places, post them to these sites as well, then ask your followers what else they would like to see. So Facebook and Google+, the biggest benefit that they have is that they're great for asking your audience, what would you like? People like to talk on Facebook and Google+. They expect that to be a two-way conversation. So it's a good place to ask people, what would you like to see me post about? What would you like to see on my website, you know, etc. Again, the real key with all of these is that you want to repurpose your content as many places as you possibly can. right? Use the same content on your blog post, then talk about it on Twitter, post it on LinkedIn with a link, and then post it on Facebook. Why? Because different people will be looking for you in different places, and you don't know where your client is going to be looking for it. A question came in, if I create a company LinkedIn account, are you saying the clients and potential clients will see each other's names? This would potentially be a breach of confidentiality. So two ways to address this. One is that you don't need to call out who are clients or not clients. It's simply anybody can go ahead and follow you at that point. So with a company page, they're simply followers. And you're not having a two-way interaction. They're not identifying themselves as clients in that case. It can also be obviously many, many people who are not clients. It can be your employees, your colleagues, lawyers, whoever else you might work with, etc. The other thing you can do is I believe that there is still a way to keep your follower list confidential if you don't want people to be able to see that. But you won't be publishing it as your list of clients, so you don't need to worry that you're actually publishing a list of clients there. And that's all I have here. So I'm over by a couple of minutes. I apologize for that, but I want to thank you very much for attending. My contact information and Accountants World information is on the left there. If you have any questions specifically for me, you can contact me at marketing@accountantsworld.com. I check that email box regularly. I want to mention a exclusive offer that Accountants World is making for today's attendees. This is not an offer you'll see anywhere else on our website. I talked about our website relief application, which is not just a website builder, but it's so much more. It allows you to communicate with your clients via client portals. It integrates with all of the other solutions that Accountants World offers for accounting and payroll and document management. Cloud Cabinet, I did not mention that by name, but that's where you get access to document management and client portals. And this allows you to communicate securely and share files securely with your clients using the cloud. You can learn more about both of those products on our website, and if you're interested in either one of those products and you're not yet a current customer of those, we have an offer available until August 15th. Please call the phone number that you see listed on the left there, 888-999-1366, to learn more about it. And this last slide will be on the slides that are published on our website as well. So if you don't write down that number now, don't worry about it. You'll see it later on as well. The last thing I want to mention is after I close out the webinar, or after you close out your webinar window, you will see the CP survey. You will not see that until you exit the webinar. A link to the survey will also be sent by email tomorrow. You only need to complete the survey one time. And remember that that survey is required in order to receive CP. Your CP certificates will be confirmed within the next day or two, and then will be issued 2 business days after that. So later on this week or early part of next week, you will see your CP certificate come through. I want to thank you again for your time. If you have any other questions, please feel free to write them in. I'll stick around for another 10 or 15 minutes to answer any questions that come in over there. Thanks again for your time. I hope this was informative, and I look forward to seeing you at the next expert webinar.